So fantastic products, and now kind of going across the United States, but all of our raw products stay in California except for raw cheese. So just to give you a perspective on what that is. To start off, where are we? Where are we? Well, we're in the Milky Way. It's awesome, they call it the Milky Way, right? But it's interesting that we are out here, little speck of humanity called Earth, and it's amazing that we are literally looking like we're in a petri dish when you consider where we are in terms of the great God-given expanse of creation, right? That's who we are. And we are in the Goldilocks zone, which is not too hot, not too cold, just right for life. And that's a pretty special place to be, because you go one planet towards the sun, you cook, one planet away from the sun, you get a little cold. So we're right there in a special little space. And we're literally a biome, an embryo of life. And it's interesting that the first form of life, excuse the religious, I'm not doing much religion, it's all science here, but if you look at the science of what we believe we came from, the bacteria were the first forms of life. And the archaea bacteria were the first forms of life, the kind of pseudo-bacteria. They are still in our gut today. But they're very disrupted by antibiotics. So we have to be very cautious about antibiotics. But that's a pretty important thing to see, that the first form of life, count your hundreds of millions of years ago or whatever it was that bacteria, and it's still in our gut today. That's pretty powerful to think about origins of life on Earth and the evolution we've gone through to become what we are today. And keep that in mind as we talk about raw milk, because it's a powerful connection to where we are and what we're doing. Our moon doesn't have any gravity, no oxygen, it's cold, no bacteria, no life, no water. It's kind of a desolate place. We've been there a couple times, but not a place to live. So Earth is a pretty special place. And it's interesting that we have an inner space in our gut that matches the outer space of the biome of Earth. So today we're going to focus on connecting the two together, because the more we dissociate them, the more trouble we get in. We came from this Earth biome. If we try to dissociate ourselves by getting too clean or killing off our bacteria within us, we are in trouble, big time. And we see that now today with our medical crisis we've got with immune depression and antibiotic resistance killing 20,000 people a year, and all kinds of horrendous things going on. Instead of looking at where we came from and the foods that fed us to make us so successful to get us where we are today, or literally a few years ago, because today's not so great. We need to get back to where we are in a little better shape. But it's interesting that there's a big connection between the roots of our soils and plants and our gut. The villi in our intestines have a lot of the same physiological things going on in a parallel, in a biome in our gut, as we have in the soils and roots in the plants. So these soils here, and there's a very big connection there in terms of what's going on with microbial life, in terms of the biome in our gut, which drives our immune system, and the soils that we derive our food from. So pretty interesting connection. That right there is the villi in your intestines, is a healthy intestinal wall. There are some earthworms right here. We're going to remind ourselves that there's more life below Earth than there is above Earth on planet Earth. And we really have to appreciate that this Earth is fed, the people living on Earth are fed by what's going on just below the soil. Feeds the roots, the sunshine, the chlorophyll, the activity of breaking down carbon sequestration. All these things are alive and well because of healthy soils. And that, yes, I'm bragging, that's soil from our pastures at Organic Pastures Dairy, which is underneath the cow's feet. Cows poop and pee on it, sunshine, grass, water, fantastic, and you get all this life down there. The big old stringy earthworms are eating carbon and spitting out wonderful things for the soils to let the plants absorb in the roots. So, very important there. We love people to come visit us, so you're all welcome to come visit us, take a tour and see where your milk may come from if you get milk from our farm. If not, come see us anyway. The farm to consumer connection is very, very important in raw milk. You have to be able to understand what's going on the farm, the food safety side, what's going on with testing, understanding the conditions of the farm, understanding the farmer, what drives them. Is it greed or is it humanity? You want to know your farmer and know your food. In fact, there's a whole USDA program called Get to Know Your Farmer, Get to Know Your Food. And it was very interesting when it started about 12 years ago, the industrial people did not like it. They did not want consumers to get to know the farmer and get to know the food. Because when they do that, it looks like raw milk. Because raw milk's on the farm, the farmer's drinking that, and this farmer-consumer connection, boy, all kinds of really tumultuous things start to happen, like bypassing highly processed foods that go through a processor, not on the farm. So pretty powerful here to see this connection and what's going on today, and there's a lot of evolution with this. That's Jenny Casera. She's Dr. Jenny Casera, and she's a USDA soil scientist, a soil biologist. And she and I shared a stage about a year and a half ago in San Diego at the National Farmers Union, where I was asked to speak about the gut microbiome. And she was talking about the roots. And at the end of the presentation, 100% agreement between us. That in fact, there's a total connection between what's going on in the soils and what's going on in your gut. And that's pretty cool to be able to share the stage with the USDA soil biologist that totally agrees that soils and your gut are completely connected. And the more we put Roundup on our plants and kill the roots and kill the bacteria and kill those ability to assimilate soil, the nutrition for the soil, the more that actually is a parallel to what we're doing to our gut as well. So organics do matter. They really do matter in terms of how we are going to treat ourselves and who we eat. Very, very important. So anyway, I just thought I'd share with you that this is what a Crohn's disease or a celiac or irritable bowel disease patient may look like in their intestines, where the villi are disrupted, the intestinal lining is really inflamed, and you've lost your mucosal lining layer as well. And so that's kind of the interesting thing that we have now. We have 1 million people in America today with irritable bowel syndrome / Crohn's disease, 1 million. Anybody want to guess how many colostomies are being made? How many colostomies per year? That's where you poop your plastic bag and you take out part of your intestines. Wild guess, any concepts? We've got 1 million people with irritable bowel and Crohn's, 130,000 a year. And the doctors say, there is no cure, food doesn't matter, eat whatever you want. And take this drug, Humira, Remicade, 6-MP, and all have a side effect of giving you cancer. So is Crohn's or colitis or irritable bowel caused by the lack of surgery or lack of medication? No, it's not. It's caused by nutrition. It's caused by the lack of whole food nutrition. It's caused by the abuse of antibiotics. It's caused by things like Roundup and all these preservatives and funky things in there that are good for shelf life, but not for gut life. And your body is not a shelf. It is an intestinal living being. Remember that first bacteria, archaea? That is what made us work. And we're going to get deeper into that. It's pretty powerful. Dr. Bonnie Basler, Princeton PhD. She was part of the Human Genome Project. Anybody ever heard of that? Pretty powerful. Back in the 1980s, our Department of Energy, DOE, the military guys, that were running all the nuclear plants and running nuclear subs and looking at nuclear medicine and looking at nuclear everything, we don't know what the human genome is. We don't know what it is that genetically makes humans human. We really don't. We know that there's 23,000 genes come from mom and dad, but there's so much more playing and we don't understand what it is. And they wanted to know this question. What is it that will affect, what's the effect on the human genome if you have somebody next to a nuclear reactor? So they spent $4 billion, and it wasn't the medical people that did this, it was the DOE, the military people that did this. And they studied the human genome. And in 2002, it was announced to Congress what they found. What they found was profoundly disturbing. Yeah, we found it, but it's not what we thought it was. 23,000 genes from mom and dad, but there's millions of genes that come from the bacteria in your body. And because of lateral transfer, these genes are actually interdependent with our human cells. That is so hard for humans to wrap their brain around that, my God, we're bacterial sapiens? That we have all this incredible genetic information coming from bacteria in our bodies that run the bandwidth of our bodies? So we've got hardware, it looks like a human, but we've got software like an app. So what you got is a dead cell phone without any operating systems and no energy without your good bacteria. The bacteria literally run the software systems that make us tick. So when you think about it that way, there's a 1 to 10 ratio between human cells and bacterial cells in your body. So 1 trillion human cells, 10 trillion bacterial cells, let's say. Round numbers, trillions, right? It's like our national debt, it's a big thing. But when you look at the bacterial DNA contributions to the DNA, it's 100 to 1, or 98 to 1, 95 to 1. It's literally so much more. So these bacteria, when they are missing, or they are not being fed properly with whole food nutrition, which they require to thrive, what happens? You become immune depressed. You start having autoimmune diseases. You start having things like Crohn's disease. You get asthma, allergies. You get all kinds of inflammation in your body. That's a laundry list of names everybody in America that we've got these problems going on metabolically in our body because we're missing this bandwidth and the food that feed that genetic information. If you can wrap your brain around this, you can make a quantum leap in terms of your health in life. And you embrace things like fermented foods, cultured foods, whole foods, and you would get away from anything that's got FDA coloring in it or preservatives. What do preservatives do? They kill off bacteria to extend shelf life. So you want to have anything you can eat that's going to support good bacterial life in your body. Sugar's not particularly good for it because it runs, the yeast goes crazy, right? Bacteria and yeast are actually polar opposites in terms of what they're trying to do for you. So you really want to embrace whole food nutrition that nourishes good bacteria in your gut. If you can do that, literally 95% of your problems go away because inflammation drops. You have flares of inflammation when you need it, when you get sick, and that goes to address problems, and then it goes away. But you don't have chronic inflammation because you have this correct parallel universe in there working properly, this bacteria. So Basler and her team actually were part of the human genome team. There's been follow-on studies from this, but this is a very powerful TED Talk, if you want to watch it, 12 minutes to change your life, talking about how they actually discovered this and how quorum sensing works and all that stuff. Pretty powerful stuff. But it's the basis of which we understand now makes our body tick, as best we understand now. 40 years ago, we were looking at other things, but now we're deeper down in, and then probably 40 years from now, we even get deeper than this. But for now, it's the best we got, it's the best we have, and we can actually make some really good sense out of it, and it works really, really well. This is a UCLA professor, Dr. Annette Jewett, and she has found in her lab at the Weintraub Cancer Institute that you need lots and lots of good bacteria, huge amounts of them, and you need the biodiversity, means different kinds of bacteria, and you need the food to feed these bacteria. 3 really critical elements. If you have these 3 critical elements, chronic inflammation becomes under control. Chronic inflammation is the origin of most diseases in our body. Our body gets so revved up, it starts doing crazy things, and weird anomalies, diseases start spouting out because your immune system can't control it. So these are the 3 things that Dr. Jewett has found in her rat studies and things she's done, and actually proven them in her lab. Very, very good, very well published information. But we are a human super colony of bacteria and food that are living in our bodies. We look like humans, but if we were truly had X-ray vision, we'd see this massive swarm of bacteria in us and on us that actually make us live well. So, if you want to take back your gut biome, first you have to seal it, and then you have to heal it. This leaky gut syndrome, lots of things get through your intestinal wall into the bloodstream, causing all kinds of reactions that should not occur. And these kinds of food we're talking about here, the gut superfoods are bone broths, good oils, olive oils. It's like an organic Mediterranean diet is what it is, without Roundup and antibiotics and all that garbage in there. Lacto-fermented vegetables, fantastic. Lots of food for the bacteria to grow on in your lower intestine. Raw milk, kefir, and raw dairy, fantastic. We'll say this a couple times, but I'm going to beat it in your head. What's the first food of life? Milk. What kind? Raw. Mother's milk. Breast milk. Wow, what is breast milk? It's kind of a sanctuary nobody wants to talk about because it's kind of sacred. And doctors all say, yeah, breastfeeding is fantastic. But then they shift their entire gears to say, oh, but baby formula is so fantastic after breastfeeding, and pasteurized milk is great and all this kind of stuff. Negative. No way. Breast milk has 700 different kinds of bacteria in it. It has a biodiversity of bacteria, including pathogens. That's how babies get their immune system push-ups. They do a little exercise with mom to build their antibodies so that they can be resistant to those things that might get them later. Uncounted numbers, 2,500 different kinds of proteins found in mother's breast milk, all undenatured, all natural building blocks of life, the amino acids. Enzymes, all kinds of enzymes, alkaline phosphatase enzyme, other enzymes, really critical for anti-inflammatory processes of the baby's belly. And it breaks down really quick, because if it gets warm, obviously breast milk's warm, it goes to the baby's belly and breaks down immediately. It's not good for shelf life, it's good for gut life. So, those are some really key lessons to think about, because the creator, whoever you want to call him, evolutionary pressures created breast milk as the optimal food of life to have a baby thrive. And if the baby didn't thrive, it died off, mom died off, and it didn't continue to go on. So the ultimate evolutionary pressures created raw milk to be the fantastic food that actually sustains life, as manifest in humans and all other mammals in terms of breastfeeding the babies. So sheer determination also is important, because people that give up and don't stay with diets have a hard time with like Crohn's disease and stuff because they don't persevere to actually force through the pain and stuff to actually get their biome back once they've lost it. So this is important stuff to think about in terms of recovery of your gut. These are some heroes that I have. We have a website called Farmers Over Pharmacies. And it was so incredibly disruptive that YouTube took it down. And we had to go up on Vimeo instead. Because it simply did one thing and went out and interviewed people that had a story about the fact that they used whole food to recover from serious illness. We didn't name a brand. We didn't talk about my brand. We didn't show any product. All we said was told the story and gave the science behind it from the European Union in terms of all the studies that they've done there, which is fantastic. And it was so incredibly disruptive. Somebody over at Google said, that's too much, we got to take it down. And I'm very proud of that. I was kind of upset, but at the same time proud of it. We came back with vengeance on Vimeo, and they're back up. But every one of these people has a powerful story. I'll tell you a couple of them real quick. This young lady right here, Jocelyn Morrow, 2.5, 3 years old, breastfed. Mom was a fantastic mom. She goes, I'm going to go to Costco and get myself some organic pasteurized milk. It's fantastic. I'm going to keep my kid really thriving. Dad wants her to be on milk. She's going to be on milk. Within weeks of being on organic pasteurized, ultra-pasteurized milk, incredible. 2 o'clock in the morning, full breakout in hives, anaphylactic shock in the ER with epinephrine, corticosteroid shots, and anaphylactic shock. So I interviewed her, and what do you know? She did some Googling, some research, and she found out that raw milk is more like her own breast milk, and she started raw milk, never had another allergic reaction ever, and she's the one that never gets sick in the community. In the daycare or whatever, she's doing fine. So great little story there. It's very heartfelt that Grandma was actually the one that did the research. Mom was a little paranoid about raw milk, and Grandma, who'd been drinking raw milk for a long time, educated Mom about it, and now you got little Jocelyn, who's just cuter than cute. Super strong, super healthy, never gets sick, or if she does, it's like a fever for a few hours and she's over it. But that's the kind of story we've got. Tara Rosas up here, she came within literally weeks of having colostomy with severe Crohn's disease she'd had for many years. And she embraced the GAPS diet, plus all those foods we had before, bone broths, raw milk kefir. She didn't have surgery. She was off all drugs within 4 months and completely fine. When her doctor said, eat whatever you want, doesn't matter, there's no cure, and you're gonna have to have these drugs for the rest of your life, and you're gonna have to have surgery, and you might die. She said, no way, and she's absolutely fine. And within 6 months, she was totally fine. So powerful stories about whole food right here being truly medicine. They've always have been. If you nourish your body, you'll have the genetic information to straighten it out. Your body's immune system generally works pretty well, with some exceptions here and there. It's not perfect, but it's darn good. So it's really powerful to look at some of these stories. It's just incredible. Samantha here, she has 3 kids, and she had Crohn's disease, and her daughter had very severe problems with eczema on her body. And she started on raw milk within a few months. She was fine, but she'd been really drinking a lot of pasteurized milk, which is very anti-inflammatory. It's the most allergenic food in America at the FDA website, pasteurized milk, #1. But yet raw milk is anti-inflammatory. It's polar opposites. She started on raw milk, and her entire family responded by having a completely different presentation with the immune system. She got rid of her Crohn's disease. She gained her weight back. She was down to 85 pounds, and now she's up to 115. She feels great. Her milk production, she was losing milk production. She was nursing her baby. She started drinking raw milk herself. Milk production went way up. So she has an entire family story about how she literally took her family from a place that was not good. And one of her daughters had fever of unknown origin, where she would have febrile seizures every month for an entire year. She started on raw milk, febrile seizures stopped, and no more fevers. So very, very important multi-family effect of raw milk in their family. Paxton up here in the ICU several times in 1 year with severe allergies and food allergies on a raw milk kefir, bone broth, and that diet we're talking about. No longer, he's on a track team and he's no longer sensitive to foods. So incredible. Doug DeBlasso here is an MMA fighter. He punched somebody, I don't know, he was in some bar fight or something. Punched somebody, those guys are MMA guys and everything. Brussels. He got a cut in his hand. The mouth is one of the most dirty places in your body. And that cut became very, very infected. And he went on antibiotics, 2 or 3 different kinds for a month. None of them worked. He went on a chemotherapy drug. It finally killed the infection on his hand. But he was going to have his hand cut off because it was so badly infected. So after he got rid of the infection with these really bad chemo drugs and antibiotics, he immediately had Crohn's disease, or irritable bowel, I should say. It was colitis. And he went on raw milk and made it go away. So very, very powerful in terms of the gut immunity connection. And Dr. Joe Rubin, who wrote The Maker's Diet, that's how he looked like right there before he started drinking raw milk kefir made from goat's milk here in San Diego back in the 90s. So he went from a guy who looked like he was really wasting away to stud muffin, kind of a looking guy. This guy here is a Maasai warrior from Kenya, attending Stanford University, got Crohn's disease, and raw milk completely put it in remission, and he's fine now. He has a double master's degree, works for the UN. So incredible stories, real stories of people recovering from severe illness by using whole food nutrition. So pretty powerful stuff. The worst of the biome killers are antibiotics and Roundup, the ones we can identify anyway. Antibiotics can save your life, but if you abuse them, they will also take your life. So if you want antibiotics to work, don't use them very often. Don't use them very often. And if you don't use them very often, your body will be responsive to them and actually work. But if you abuse them, they will not be there when you really need them. So you want to use nutrition as much as you can and only use antibiotics, and you absolutely have to. In Northern Europe, they're using protocols now where they're very, very seldom they use antibiotics for ear infections in kids. They use probiotics, they use ear washes, they do all kinds of other things. And what do you know? They don't have antibiotic resistance. And the antibiotics, when they do need to use them, do work. But places in the world where antibiotics are not regulated, like Afghanistan, we can buy across, they've got people dying left and right from antibiotic-resistant infections. So we've got to be very cautious about antibiotics. The seeds of biome destruction, we talked about it a little bit, but all these highly preserved foods, right down here, highly preserved foods, sugar, antibacterial soaps, pesticides, antibiotics, Roundup, shelf life extending kinds of things are really, really tough. Other things are like high C-section rates, because if the baby doesn't come in contact with the birth canal fluids of mom, then she doesn't get the transfer of the biome from mom to baby. And then low breastfeeding rates also are a challenge. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse for 23 years, has her master's degree in teaching nurses how to deliver babies. And it's interesting that cleaning the baby is a big thing, where immediate shocks and wash the baby off and make them smell real good. When there's cultures around the world where they don't clean the baby for a month. The Chinese don't touch the baby for a month. And the mom and baby stay as one biome unit just to make sure that immune system transfer is complete. So we have a cultural disconnect with the reality of the fact that we have to build this biome to actually have strength and immunity to have babies thrive. Early heavy vaccination. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I think there's madness when you look at 85 to 90 vaccinations we do in the first 8 or 10 years of life, and Europe's doing 16 to 18. There's something really wrong. And why do we have 5 of them at once? And why have them so early? Spread them out and be thoughtful about what you're doing, so you only go after the bugs you really need to go after for immunity, but don't go crazy with 85 or 90. Somebody's making money on this that's really stupid. So what you've got to do is build the immune system of the baby first. So strength in the immune system, that's through nutrition and breastfeeding and all the natural things you can do. And then if you need to do a polio, great, but you delay it, so the baby doesn't have a response to it because they have a strong immune system already. You don't insult the immune system before you've built it. If you're going to stress a little bit, make sure it's built before you do that. So these are the things we are very concerned about here. Low-fat diets, our brain is made of fat. We need to have good fats for our brain. I believe in a 90% vegan diet, but the 10% better have some animal fats in it, because I'll tell you what, vegetables are fantastic, but you better have the other really good fats. That should be grass-fed fat. That should be good saturated fat, because that's what builds the immune system. It also builds the brain and it insulates the nervous tissue of the body. And those that have not had good animal fats actually have a hard time after a few years. It's really a tough time. They're shaking like a leaf. It's bad news, because they've literally depleted their insulation around the nervous tissue, and their brain has not had the necessary support to actually build the structure properly. So we need good cholesterols, we need good fats. Roundup residues, we've got to get rid of those. That's going to be a big, big millennial generation challenge. I apologize we brought this to you. You've got lots of problems to fix now, but these are challenges we're going to have to get out of our environments. So we need to contact dirt and sunshine, and literally all these things are signs of that consumer to farmer disconnection. Connect back to your dirt any way you can. Good gardening, connect to the sunshine, take the shirt off when some sun hit your face. Get connected to the soil, get connected to good food. Here's a picture of an ulcerated intestine here versus what it's supposed to look like. And we've been insulting the Earth's macrobiome. Now it's starting to affect our microbiome in our gut. We have 5.2 million Californians with asthma. There's only 39 million of us in California, and 5.2 have asthma. And we're losing 11 children a day in the United States from asthma. But yet children that drink raw milk They don't have asthma. It drops dramatically in terms of the rate. The European studies show that. So again, whole foods is medicine in terms of not having to be on all these inhalers and drugs and antibiotics all the time and getting rid of the inflammation through nutrition. It's just a wake-up call for us to realize we need to embrace nutrition. So this is pretty profound to think about this. Yep, biome failure is a first world crisis where you hear about, okay, you've got a problem, go to the doctor. Of course you go to the doctor. You're scared to death, right? What's the alternative? Stay home and die? So you go to the doctor. That's the only place you can go to get advice. Unfortunately, doctors get about 4 hours of nutrition in their 6 or 7 years of medical school. And they delegate it to somebody else because this really doesn't matter because it's not part of the pharmaceutical box. So we are really saying, I was a paramedic for 16 years. And one of the things I saw on every medical aid I ever went on, I went 15,000 calls, delivered 26 kids and CPR and patched a lot of holes and did all kinds of things. But what we always saw was somebody there prostrate, call 911, and they've got a pile of FDA-approved drugs next to them and never have any good food in the house. There's something really whacked about that. I am blessed that the second chapter of my life, not as a paramedic, but I took the old paramedic Star of Life there, made it green, and I put a Farmers Over Pharmacy pitchfork in the middle of it because I just said, hey, let's do this. Is that now we can maybe correct this medical misdirection and complete the toolbox. We need advanced drugs, we need surgery, we need those things, but it's a small part of the big toolbox, which has to do with love in your life, sunshine, nutrition, holistic approach to things that make you well, right? Going to the hospital repeatedly will kill you. That's where people die. Trust me, a lot of people die in hospitals. Antibiotic resistance is just not good. So we really need to kind of redirect where we're going. And it's fiscally irresponsible for us as a country. In 1962, 6% of our gross national product was focused on medicine and pharmaceuticals and drugs. 6% in 1962. Now it's pushing 21, 22%. Are we going the right direction quickly? No, I don't think so. We're going the wrong direction quickly. And we should be emphasizing more organic farms and supporting them through good, sustainable practices and connection to consumers. And yeah, we need advanced medicine, but I tell you what, it should be less of the whole. And we don't emphasize that. We're really relying on drugs and surgeries when we should be preventing it, because that's the only real way to make progress in sustainable medicine. We're spending billions and billions of dollars a year on this, so it's really, really ugly. Here's an interesting thing I like to show, which is antibiotic resistance. This is when the antibiotics were first born back in the 40s, all the way to the most current ones now in the 2000s. And everyone has had a short life. 10, 15 years, they're no good anymore. All right, question. What was the first form of life on Earth? Archaea bacteria. If they died off easily, you think we'd be here? No. These suckers adapt and overcome. They don't want to give up. If they die, we die. Okay? So when we use these antibiotics, anti-human, they tend to not last very long because you have them adapt and overcome what's trying to kill them. And you see more and more antibiotic resistance, and you see more and more challenges with antibiotics not being effective. So they're the first ones on here. They're the first ones to be on Earth, and they join us when we were born. We don't have a lot of bacteria antibiotics when we're in mom's womb. They join, and they'll eat us when we die. So they literally run the show on Earth. They aren't here. There's no bacteria on the moon or Mars or Mercury or any other planet. Bacteria run life on Earth. So it's pretty powerful. And if you look at the origins of life down here, the common ancestor is the archaea bacteria, and here we are out here, the eukarya, as the animal. So we all come from the origins in the planet tree there. You can see where we all came from. It took 1 billion years to get over here, but that's where we came from. Again, a mother gives birth twice. She gives birth to the baby, and then the biome for the baby. Because the baby's born without a lot of biome, a lot of the bacterial genetic information that drives them to be a strong little immune system creature. And so we need to make sure that that baby latches on to mom's breast and gets colostrum and gets nursed well. And don't go scrubbing them off with a bunch of baby shampoo and stuff. Let them be what they're going to be. And let them absorb that stuff. And let them nestle with mom and dad and kisses from everybody. Those kisses actually contribute bacteria as well. Make sure that they're healthy kisses. But the bottom line is, this is the womb of life, is to get that connection, and there's 2 phases. And we've missed that second phase. A quick little story, because I've got the time to tell it. As a paramedic, I delivered 26 babies. And every one of the birth certificates said, born out of asepsis. Now this is back in the 80s, 90s. Now that means they screwed up and they didn't have the baby in the hospital. They did it out there in the short weeds and on newspaper in the kitchen or whatever the heck it was. And they got bacteria on the baby, and it was born out of asepsis. Now that's the preferred method. So it's really interesting to see how 25 years of me signing birth certificates BOA, now it's an honor. Kids were all born out in wherever. So it's interesting to see just 25 years of change, how this is connected back to science. It's our first food of life, and because of that, it has all these elements here that are missing in the baby. The baby needs to actually finish its immune system and complete it and begin the steps of actually having strong immunity, which takes a lot of time. It's not something that happens right away. It's building block. Baby's born. Baby's connected to mom. Baby starts to do things like what? Crawl around and grab things, and what do? Put it in their mouth. What are they doing? Sampling their ecosystems so they can become more and more adapted to their environment. And then when they get bigger and bigger, they go out and they connect with other kids, and they go out in the sunshine, they dig around, they put dirt in their mouth, and they do all kinds of stuff. That is there for a reason. And dirty kids, it's an important part of, to get kids out in the dirt, really important. So raw milk has the seeds of life in it because it has biodigestible bacteria, and also has all the food to feed that bacteria, because raw milk is a whole food. If you had to, you could survive only on raw milk, literally, only. It has enough moisture in it for water, has protein, sugars, got everything there in exact balance, because babies thrive on it by itself, nothing else, for the first year of life. So pretty profound here that the seeds of life are found in raw milk. But when you cook it, when you pasteurize it through ultra-high temperature pasteurization or whatever process they're using, HCSP or UHT, literally all those things are done, they're gone. I have some brochures up here which actually explain this in more detail. There's a great brochure I like to give out here, which is the Farmer's World Pharmacy brochure, which has a chart. And in that chart, it shows a comparison of all things found in raw milk and breast milk and cow's milk. And you could also say / camel's milk, horse milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, all mammal milk have similar things. And then missing in pasteurized or in plant-based alternatives. And it's pretty profound to go, whoa, all those things. It's not just protein and sugar, it's all these other things that are incredible. So pretty powerful there. Dr. Bruce German, he is probably one of the foremost researchers in the world on breast milk and raw milk. And he has an organization called the International Milk Genomics Consortium. And my wife and I have been privileged to attend for the last, I think it's 6 years now. Been going? 7 years. And the last one was in Sacramento. We've been to Aarhus, Denmark. We've been to Sydney, Australia. We've been all over the world. And they have all of the PhDs they're studying, trying to make a better breast milk formula. And they're all very frustrated because they can't. Spray drying destroys things when you make it into powder. The proteins are denatured. The enzymes are missing. The probiotics are denatured. It becomes allergenic. It's not the living food for mom. So he's got these guys together every year. And it's interesting to see this last year, again, they're coming out. Now they're complaining about breast milk banks where moms contribute milk for contributions to babies that need milk. That all gets pasteurized. And they're finding out that, that doesn't work so well. So they're trying to find better ways to maybe test the mom and have her be a donor like blood, like more of a blood donor bank versus pasteurized. Because you would never think about giving pasteurized blood to somebody, would you? My God, that would be tragic. Well, blood and milk are very similar in terms of the serum types of values that are found in it in terms of going to the body and doing things. So this is pretty profound stuff. His quote was, "Pasteurization is an 18th century solution to an 18th century problem. We can do much better." We also have him saying that the baby does not have a fully developed digestive tract, unable to digest processed pasteurized dairy products. Babies need raw milk. They can't digest stuff that's shelf-stable. It just doesn't work. So pretty powerful researcher, very, very smart. And I listen to him whenever he's speaking at the IMGC every year. It's really profound to see that. This year they announced some new technology that's now available to test pathogens. Pathogens are those disease-causing bad bugs, like E. coli, 157H7, the really bad news. A lot of that's come on because of antibiotic abuse, but they have a test now called Cibus DX, and they announced at the IMGC that in fact in 30 minutes on the farm, a farmer can test for 4 bad bugs: Listeria monocytogenes, Salmonella, Campylobacter, and E. coli 157H7/STEC. On the farm in 30 minutes, cheap and easy and very accurate. Wow, that's a game changer, because before it would take days at a lab, a specialized lab, to get the data back. And now you can produce raw milk on the farm with very clean standards, great sanitation practices, and then you can test the end product to make sure that you're good to go in terms of making sure there's no gas. And sort of getting bad news back 3 or 4 days later, you know what's going on before it even gets to the bottom. So very profound changes happening in science that are motivating this emergence of raw milk happening right now across the country. Now, not all raw milk is created the same. There's some raw milk created for pasteurization, and there's raw milk created for human consumption, and they are worlds apart. And I'll show you the difference here in just a second. Here's that chart we showed you earlier, and I won't belabor it too long, but very important, all the things here, and this is just a partial list of all these fantastic things found in raw milk and how they're changed in pasteurization dramatically. And over here, soy milk and almond milk just don't have them. So there's an alkaline phosphatase enzyme, which is really powerful in terms of anti-inflammatory factors. There's the raw whey protein, which is known to suppress mast cell degradation and release of histamine, which is good for asthma. There's all kinds of stuff here that are destroyed, which makes pasteurized milk so allergenic, but raw milk not so. So pretty powerful thing. Raw milk is the food that was created out of generation by generation selective pressures over 100,000, pick your number, a long, long time, to make sure that baby had the nutrition for life from that moment. And if it didn't work, they died off. So selective pressures make sure every generation things get better or they die. And that's where it's powerful why we have what we have today in terms of raw milk. The science, we've talked about a little bit, but here's some more. There's a bunch of peer-reviewed studies in Europe. The Parcel study, Gabriel study, Pasteur study, the Amish study, there's a bunch more. The LMU study, all showing kids that drink raw milk, fewer asthma attacks, much less asthma. Allergies diminished, eczema is eliminated. Ear infections much reduced, colds much reduced. Tremendous improvement of the immune system. These are all peer-reviewed articles you can see on PubMed and NIH. Doctors don't really know about them because this came about 5 to 7 years ago. Most doctors went to medical school 20 years ago. So this is new stuff. You can ask him, have you read the Parcel study? He's going to probably turn red in the faces. Well, it's not PubMed. Yeah, it is PubMed. Well, really? He needs to read that because it's really very powerful. But all of these studies, there's one here I like, which was done by J.P. Lawls, and he was a researcher in France who was studying red wine in the French paradox. My wife loves red wine. So he realized that it wasn't the red wine that was causing the decrease in inflammation in the gut. It was the 2 pounds of raw cheese the French eat every week. And in fact, the alkaline phosphatase was that driving force of the enzyme which actually decreased inflammation in the gut from all this raw cheese. And you add a little red wine, probably good for you too. But the bottom line was the raw cheese that actually drove the anti-inflammatory complex, or part of it. Mast cells, just a lot of studies there. The Raw Milk Institute was formed, was part of that formation, about 10 years ago, and has come up with standards, training, testing, everything, and actually collects bacteria counts from dairymen that actually participate with us. And we build a database. We have 15,000 data points now to show that raw milk, for intentionally produced for human consumption, when it's tested with good practices, is incredibly low risk. But when you do raw milk for pasteurization, and you run 10,000 cows through a barn, and you just whip machines on and don't care, you got problems. That's not the milk we're talking about here. That's raw, but that's really sloppy raw. That's intended to be pasteurized. We're talking about clean milk from a farmer who's really paying attention. In fact, there's a peer-reviewed article which was put out this last summer by some researchers in Canada that showed there was a Raw Milk Institute effect, or a RAMI effect, of immediate drop-off of illnesses about 5 years ago because we trained 200 farmers in North America on how to do raw milk well. And the other farmers that didn't get trained looked at those going, I better do it that way because if I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. So it's interesting to see this effect of training, a 357% increase in raw milk permits, but yet a 78% decrease in illnesses. And by the way, no deaths. So that's pretty interesting. There's been 84 deaths from pasteurized milk in the last 40 years, and 0. 2 if you want to count some imported raw cheeses, but I don't count those. But literally 0 from raw milk that's retail approved in the United States. Okay, this is raw milk over here for human consumption. You can see those milk filters. That's what milk flows through on the farm. They look really, really clean. They have a little bit of cream on them. And this is the milk filter sitting in the back of somebody's truck down the road. It's intended for pasteurization. So you can see the quantum difference. You know what that brown stuff is? Poop. Cow poop. Because they didn't wash the udder off. They just whipped the machine off. Because they're going to get pasteurized, who cares, right? The bacteria counts could be anything. Pathogens doesn't matter, because you're going to cook it. That milk over there is intended for human consumption. You notice there's a little lab test there, and it's really carefully scrutinized when it's tested. It's a different process. So you have to, in your mind, think raw milk for humans, raw milk for pasteurization. The people versus pasteurized. Very, very important to think about that. Here's another study piece which is really interesting. So the zeros down here in terms of pathogens found on the trained Raw Milk Institute trained farmers versus percentages of bad pathogens found in milk supplies from milk intended for pasteurization. So I don't want to get into a lot of these charts because it just take you forever, but it's interesting to see that. Good testing, you can see that raw milk under a microscope looks completely different than pasteurized milk under the microscope. One's completely degraded into like fine sandpaper pieces, homogenization, pasteurization, versus something that has very much looks like blood, or looks like a coral reef, very intentional structure. These are the tests you can do nowadays with Cybus DX, as well as BACS PCR. Organic Pastures Dairy uses the BACS PCR to test for pathogens. We get data back in 11 hours. So before that milk is ever utilized, we know it's negative for 15787. So pretty powerful as far as technology is concerned. No confusion here. I think that's kind of cool. Remember that picture I gave you, that Maasai warrior, the guy from Africa? That's how he drank raw milk for the first 10 years of his life. He would have starved if he hadn't had raw milk directly from cows. That's how he lived. Pretty powerful. And mom breastfeeding is obviously very, very, very important. Here's raw milk historically around the world. Camels, cows, goats, sheep, horses, all over the world. They have co-evolved with us. And if we didn't have supermarkets down the street, we'd be begging for one of these animals because we'd be hungry. We'd have to hunt, fish, or farm. And farming takes time. Hunting and fishing sometimes isn't successful. But you can always go out and get milk from your animal if the animal has something to eat. So this is a very important thing. And what's old raw milk called? Cheese. Fantastic. Store it for later. So this is very important to see the co-evolution of us. And whenever I have a vegan, I don't want to use that word in a derogatory fashion, but there's a deep concern I have, because if you look at strict veganism, there's no fat, no animal fat. Breast milk comes from an animal. My wife is an animal. Think about that. Why would you deny a child food intended to build the child's health? And you see kids getting really sick and some dying from these really strict plant-based diets, especially young, that have this problem. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it's really tough there for me to adopt that because I just don't like to see kids get sick. Next, there you go. Organic Pastures, we'll talk a little bit about us because I'm very proud of what we've done. We've pioneered a lot of food safety stuff. We have test and hold with BACS PCR. We also have very clean sanitary measures, which you can come see for yourself and actually watch the cows be milked, the pastures and everything. Pretty powerful there. That's Luis, is our creamery manager. That's our new milk barn we finished about 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, excuse me. It's purpose-built for raw milk production. It has all kinds of cool stuff that we've learned over 15 years to make sure that it was done right, including separate silo tanks. So one batch of milk goes into one silo tank, the next one goes to the next one, and that milk doesn't go anywhere in that silo tank, and we know exactly what's in it. We can segregate batches of milk. And the milk comes out of the cow super clean. Within 1 minute, it's super cold. It happens super quick. So you secure the long shelf life of 14 to 22 days, depending on how warm you keep it in your refrigerator. Because remember, bacteria want to live. They double their count at body temperature. That's how you can make yogurt while letting it get warm. So super cold, super quick, super clean. This is an event we're going to have later this summer, I hope. It's called Camping with the Cows. We've had 4 of these. And we had several hundred people come and spend 2 days with us. And boy, is it fun. Campfires and food and tours and letting the kids play in the dirt. It's a lot of fun. So watch the Facebook and the announcements. We'll have that happen. There's another picture of our brand new milk barn there. And we are planning on building a brand new creamery here, which we want to be the ultimate farm experience in terms of going to meet your farmer, see your food, and see from grass to glass the entire process occur. And if I have anything to do with it, we're also going to have underground cheese cave, which is going to be really cool. Under the pastures, you'll be able to go in and say, this is where we age our cheese under pastures. So that'll be kind of cool. So this is our farm here, and it's all pasture-based. You see the cows on pasture back here, and then this is our milk barn. And that's our brand, our new brand, which is actually a picture of a cow that's been done in watercolor. My daughter Kaylee gets the credit for that. And there's our wonderful cheese, which is truly raw, selling in about 1,000 stores nationally. And there's our kefir, which is fantastic gut food, always has been. Stuff's awesome, isn't it? You have it?
No, we drink it daily.
Wow, he's smiling and happy. Good. This is powerful. It's got the biodiversity, it's got the fantastic load of bacteria, and the food to feed it. It's a package of one in terms of gut immunity food. And there's my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters, Tiffany, who's totally precious, little raw milk drinker. And we like to promote our kids because they're the next generation. They're going to be doing what I'm doing here in 20 years. So remember this. Taking a probiotic pill doesn't generally work very well. It's like putting alligators in a desert. You have to first create the environment in which the probiotics will work. That's nutrition. You have a swamp, you put the alligators in there, they thrive. But you've got to create that swamp first. You can't just put a probiotic into a dry environment like a desert. So what you want to do is create the environment in which the probiotics will thrive. So eating and then seeding in is the way you go. Just important. Rewild your gut. Very important quote from Dr. Bruce Sherman. Again, failure is not an option. I don't know of any other place to live. So let's just screw up Mother Earth and let's do our best job to embrace things like pasture-based management, which is great for carbon sequestration, and eating well so our kids don't get sick. And our life will continue to extend versus we just had a little bit of a U-turn. We're now 1 year shorter than we used to be. Most of it was opiate suicides that caused that little tick. But we've got to start avoiding illness by eating better. That's the message here. So it's pretty humble that we are, humanity, as a guest on this little probiotic biome. And I tell you what, if we don't treat it well, nourished by sunshine, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So it's a wake-up lesson to the next generation, especially to make decisive change going forward. So that said, we got 10 minutes for questions. So, yes?